At 3:47 am on a moonless Tuesday morning in the heart of Los Angeles, the Federal Bureau of Investigation and Immigration and Customs Enforcement executed the most shocking corruption takedown in American history. Federal agents breached the office of California's Social Security Director, Dr. Harold Mansfield, and what they found inside would shake the foundations of every retirement account in the state. $2.3 billion, stolen from 9,000 retired citizens. Money that elderly men and women had spent decades earning, saving, and trusting the government to protect. But this was not a simple fraud case. This was engineered theft, systematically extracted from the most vulnerable members of society by a criminal network that reached from the deserts of Arizona to the border cities of Texas and deep into California's administrative heart. The operation had been in development for 14 months. DACE analysts had traced unusual patterns in Social Security disbursement records, flagging irregular claims that all shared one common thread: recipients who had died years ago, beneficiaries who never existed, and payments routed through shell accounts controlled by a network of front companies spanning 3 states. The numbers told a story of industrial-scale theft, but it was the human cost that made this case different. 9,000 retirees, many of them in their 70s, 80s, even 90s, woke up to find their accounts emptied. Pension funds that had taken a lifetime to build simply vanished. And behind it all stood a man who had sworn to protect them. This is a story about how deep the rot goes, and the next part is worse. At 4:32 a.m., darkness hung thick over downtown Los Angeles. The fog rolled in from the Pacific, swallowing streetlights and turning the financial district into a labyrinth of shadows. Somewhere in the distance, a police siren wailed once, then died. The city was silent except for the hum of black SUVs moving in perfect formation down Spring Street. FBI tactical units moved first, splitting into 3 breach teams designated as Alpha, Bravo, and Charlie. Each team consisted of 8 agents in full tactical gear, supported by a 4-person entry squad armed with battering rams and flashbang grenades. Behind them came the financial crimes investigators, specialists trained to secure digital evidence before it could be wiped or encrypted. ICE federal agents sealed the perimeter, establishing a 3-block containment zone that would trap anyone trying to flee the building. The target was the 7th floor of the State Administrative Building, a nondescript concrete structure that housed the California Social Security Bureau, but the office they were about to breach was not what it appeared to be. Breach Team Alpha hit the main entrance at 4:34 a.m. The flashbang detonated with a thunderclap that echoed through the empty lobby, illuminating the interior in a blinding white flash. 3 seconds later, the door buckled under the battering ram, and agents poured in, moving low and fast through the reception area. 2 security guards were neutralized without a shot fired, their hands raised in confusion and terror. What happened next exceeded everything the investigators had prepared for. On the 3rd floor, Breach Team Charlie discovered a server room that should not have existed. Behind a false wall and a storage closet, agents found a climate-controlled chamber housing 42 high-capacity servers, each one running calculations that would take weeks to decode. The wiring traced back to a private network that bypassed all state monitoring systems, connecting directly to offshore data centers in the Cayman Islands and Panama. But the real shock came from the basement. Breach Team Bravo descended into the sub-level parking garage, following encrypted signals that their digital scanners had flagged as emanating from a specially shielded room. What they found there would make headlines across the country. The room measured 40 feet by 30 feet, reinforced with steel walls and electromagnetic shielding that would have blocked any external surveillance. Inside, stacked in neat rows against the far wall, were duffel bags filled with cash, bundles of $100 bills separated by rubber bands, labeled with dates and recipient codes. The floor was covered with metal filing cabinets containing hard copies of transactions, routing numbers, and beneficiary information that matched the fraudulent claims DACE analysts had been tracking for over a year. Federal agents seized $17 million in cash from that room alone. But the money was only half the story. In a reinforced safe in the corner, investigators discovered encrypted hard drives containing what they estimated was records of over 9,000 fraudulent Social Security claims filed over a 6-year period. The scheme had been operating since 2018, growing in sophistication each year as the network expanded its reach into Texas border cities and the desert regions of Arizona. The seizure also included 43 kilograms of cocaine, 6 kilograms of methamphetamine, and nearly 8,000 fentanyl pills that had been stored in the basement as payment to corrupt officials. The Social Security Director's office had become a drug fortress and financial crime hub rolled into one, protected by the very systems meant to protect retired citizens. Agents arrested 11 people that night, including 3 senior bureau employees who attempted to destroy evidence before being apprehended. But the man at the top of the operation was not among them. Dr. Harold Mansfield had vanished. By 6 a.m., the FBI's Cyber Forensics Division in Quantico, Virginia, had mobilized an emergency response team to Los Angeles. Senior analyst Maria Santos arrived at the crime scene within hours, her team bringing portable decryption equipment that would allow them to crack the encryption on the seized hard drives without transporting the evidence across the country. At 11:47 a.m., after nearly 5 hours of processing, the first layer of encryption broke. What appeared on the screen made even veteran investigators pause. The network was codenamed Project Silver Lining, and it was not merely a fraud operation. It was a complete infrastructure for redirecting government retirement benefits directly into cartel-controlled accounts. Shell corporations registered in Delaware, Nevada, and Wyoming served as the primary conduits, each one designed to appear legitimate on paper. But the real architecture was far more sophisticated. The analysts traced a web of 63 ghost companies, 18 sham charities, and 11 fake nonprofit foundations that had been established over the past 8 years specifically to launder the stolen retirement funds. Restaurant chains, logistics firms, and agricultural import businesses provided cover for the movement of money across state lines and international borders. Each transaction was disguised as a legitimate payment, routed through a series of intermediary accounts designed to confuse financial investigators. But the discovery that shocked everyone the most came from a single encrypted file buried 3 layers deep in the server architecture. It was a communication log, and it contained messages between Dr. Harold Mansfield and someone the analysts identified only by a codename, Sovereign. The messages revealed that Mansfield had not been acting alone. Sovereign was a high-ranking official within the California state government, someone with access to judicial appointment records, law enforcement deployment schedules, and direct communication channels with border security coordinators in both Texas and Arizona. The codename appeared in correspondence dating back to 2016, 2 years before the fraud scheme officially began. At 2:15 p.m., the decryption team isolated the digital signature attached to Sovereign's authorization codes. Cross-referencing with state employment records, they identified the signature as belonging to Deputy Governor Raymond Castellano, the second highest elected official in California and a man known for his public advocacy on behalf of senior citizens. The evidence was damning. Castellano had authorized the creation of at least 14 shell companies used in the fraud scheme. His encrypted approval codes had been used to bypass security protocols on the Social Security Bureau's internal network, and his personal email address appeared in correspondence discussing the distribution of stolen funds to cartel-aligned associates operating along the Texas border. The analysts realized they were not looking at corruption. They were looking at command-level collusion. This was not negligence. This was engineered treason. The implications spread like cracks in a frozen lake. If Castellano was involved, then the network extended far beyond one bureau director and a handful of corrupt employees. The entire state apparatus had been compromised, transformed into a secure drug empire hub where cartel operations could run with governmental cover and protection. Agents worked through the night, pulling thread after thread from the digital tapestry. By dawn, they had mapped connections to human trafficking operations in San Antonio, migrant smuggling corridors running through Tucson and Phoenix, and drug distribution networks extending into Nevada and New Mexico. The operation had just begun. At 4 a.m. the following morning, a command center activated in a classified facility outside Sacramento. The room measured 60 feet by 40 feet, its walls lined with high-definition monitors displaying real-time feeds from aerial surveillance units, ground team deployments, and financial tracking systems. On the central display, a digital map of California pulsed with red markers indicating targets across 17 cities and counties. FBI Director Samuel Cross addressed the assembled forces via encrypted video link. What we are about to execute is the largest coordinated strike in Bureau history. Over 1,200 federal agents, 63 SWAT teams, and support units from DIA, ICE, and DEETS will simultaneously hit every point of this network. This operation is designated Silver Lining Collapse, weapons free. Begin execution at 5:00 a.m. sharp. Black Hawk helicopters lifted off from secret staging areas across the state, their rotors cutting through the pre-dawn darkness. On the ground, convoys of armored vehicles moved toward targets in Los Angeles, San Diego, Fresno, Sacramento, and 14 other cities. In the Texas border cities of El Paso, Laredo, and Brownsville, DIA strike teams synchronized their assault times with California forces, hitting mirror targets that were part of the same criminal infrastructure. In Arizona, SWAT units converged on warehouses in Tucson, safe houses in Phoenix, and a suspected drug superlab hidden in the desert outside Yuma. The first target fell at 5:07 a.m. In the wealthy hills above Pasadena, federal agents breached a mansion belonging to a former state senator named Gregory Hollister. The property served as a command center for the fraud network's Western operations. Inside, agents found 3 cartel operatives armed with automatic weapons, a fully equipped encryption workstation, and documentation linking Hollister to financial transfers exceeding $400 million. The agents seized 12 kilograms of fentanyl, 83 firearms, and a private jet parked in the underground garage that had been used to transport cash and narcotics between California and Texas. Simultaneously, in El Paso, Texas, DIA agents raided an underground casino that had been serving as a money laundering hub for the network. The establishment operated behind a legitimate gaming license, but behind the casino floor, investigators discovered a vault containing $18 million in cash and detailed ledgers recording payments to corrupt Border Patrol agents who had been facilitating the movement of drug shipments through official checkpoints. In the Arizona desert, 50 miles east of Yuma, a tactical team surrounded a warehouse complex that had been converted into a drug superlab capable of producing 500,000 fentanyl pills per day. The facility was powered by a stolen municipal electrical feed, and its production capacity represented a threat to the national opioid crisis that federal authorities had been fighting for years. Agents seized the lab intact, preserving equipment that would help forensic chemists trace the source of precursor chemicals entering the United States from Mexico. By 11:00 a.m., the operation had swept across 3 states in a single coordinated strike. Federal agents executed 147 arrests, seized $219 million in cash and assets, and dismantled criminal infrastructure that had been operating with impunity for nearly a decade. The underworld took more damage in 6 hours than in the last 6 years. The revelations came faster as investigators processed the seized evidence. Inside the files recovered from the mansion in Pasadena, analysts found patrol schedules that had been leaked to cartel operatives weeks before planned raids. The documents revealed that at least 37 officers within the California Highway Patrol had been on the cartel payroll, receiving monthly payments ranging from $5,000 to $30,000 depending on their rank and access level. These officers had falsified patrol grids, diverted resources away from known drug corridors, and provided advance warning of law enforcement operations to network coordinators. The corruption extended further into the judicial system. Internal emails recovered from Castellano's private server showed coordination between network operatives and at least 9 judges who had been issuing favorable rulings in cases involving cartel-aligned defendants. Sentencing recommendations were altered, evidence was suppressed, and trial dates were delayed indefinitely to give cartel lawyers time to manufacture legal defenses. In exchange, these judges received payments routed through the same shell company network that had been used to launder stolen retirement funds. Border security had been compromised at every level. In Texas, investigators uncovered evidence that a senior DIA field supervisor in Laredo had been selling operation schedules to cartel contacts for over 3 years. The supervisor, whose name was redacted pending trial, had received payments totaling over $2 million and had been directly responsible for enabling the movement of over 15 tons of narcotics through checkpoints that should have been impenetrable. The betrayal cut deep. Federal agents interviewed honest officers who had spent careers building cases against cartel operations, only to learn that colleagues they trusted had been dismantling their work from the inside. One senior agent, speaking on condition of anonymity, described the discovery as watching your own family poison the water supply. By the end of the first week, 104 law enforcement officials across 3 states had been arrested on corruption charges directly connected to the Silver Lining Network. What investigators were seeing was not a collection of bad actors. It was a second secret police force, a parallel enforcement system controlled by cartel money and coordinated by men like Castellano who had weaponized their positions of trust. The badge would need to be rebuilt from the ground up. The investigation widened as analysts traced financial flows beyond state borders. Shipping manifests recovered from the Arizona Superlab revealed shipments of precursor chemicals arriving through the port of Long Beach, disguised as legitimate agricultural imports. The manifests had been altered to reflect lower quantities than what actually arrived, allowing cartel operatives to claim materials for drug production while documentation showed harmless farming supplies. Way stations along interstate highways from California to Texas had been selectively shutting down for scheduled maintenance precisely when drug convoys needed to pass without inspection. Records showed that these maintenance windows had been authorized by state transportation officials who were themselves receiving payments from the network. The cartel had not merely infiltrated California, they had redesigned the system for their future operations. Evidence recovered from Castellanos' personal files revealed plans to expand the fraud scheme nationally, using California as a template for similar operations in Nevada, Oregon, and Washington. The documents described a long-term strategy to redirect retirement benefits from federal programs across the western United States, establishing what Castellano had called a permanent revenue infrastructure that operates beyond the reach of conventional law enforcement. The vision was chilling: a shadow government designed to drain retirement accounts, fund cartel operations, and shield criminal enterprises from accountability for decades to come. But the plan would never see execution. By the time federal agents had finished their sweep, the network that Castellano had spent years constructing lay in ruins, its architects facing the full weight of American justice. Power does not always announce itself with violence. Sometimes it moves quietly, wearing the face of trust, speaking the language of protection. Dr. Harold Mansfield stood before cameras and pledged his career to safeguarding the retirement security of California citizens. Deputy Governor Raymond Castellano championed legislation to expand Social Security benefits and protect elderly beneficiaries from fraud. But behind those promises lay something else entirely: a calculated scheme to drain accounts, exploit trust, and transform government into an instrument of organized crime. The cost of that betrayal cannot be measured in dollars alone. 9,000 retired citizens woke up to discover their life savings had been stolen by people they were supposed to be able to trust. Some of those citizens were already deceased, their benefits still being siphoned into cartel accounts years after their passing. Others were living in nursing homes, dependent on the very funds that had been stolen from them, facing impossible choices between medicine and food because someone in a position of power had decided their retirement was worth more as cartel money than as dignity for those who earned it. Fentanyl pills continue to flow across American borders, killing more than 70,000 people every year. Cocaine and methamphetamine destroy neighborhoods from Los Angeles to El Paso to Phoenix. Human trafficking operations exploit the vulnerable, forcing men, women, and children into modern slavery, while corrupt officials look the other way in exchange for cash. These are not abstract statistics. They are the results of systems that were compromised from the inside, built by people who took an oath and broke it. If you are still watching, tap like so more people see this story. Comment below and expose if you want this corruption dragged into the light. Share this video and demand accountability. The fight against these networks is not won in a single night or a single raid. It is won by people who refuse to look away, who insist on knowing what happens in the shadows, and who refuse to let silence be the only response to treason.